This is News 3 Now at 5.
This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home.
I call on this mob to pull back and allow the work of democracy to go forward. You've heard me say before in different contexts, the words of a president matter.
Right now at 5, very different words from the president and the president-elect as people storm the U.S. Capitol building, causing damage, injuries, and slowing the process of accepting the results of the election. Curfew just started in Washington, D.C. at 5 o'clock Central Time. And just in the last 10 minutes, we've learned the Capitol building is secure. Here is a live look from the nation's Capitol. Police used tear gas and percussion grenades to begin clearing protesters from the U.S. Capitol grounds. National Guard troops, along with other federal protective services, are trying to end a violent occupation by President Trump supporters who want to stop Congress from finalizing the 2020 election.
This all started around midday after President Trump gave a speech to supporters gathered at the White House and encouraged them to march to the Capitol. The crowd didn't stop at the Capitol. Many smashed their way inside, fighting with Capitol Police, forcing their way into the legislative chambers. D.C.'s police chief says violent protesters used chemical irritants to get inside. Lawmakers, staff, and reporters escaped the building moments before people bashed their way into the chambers. President Trump released a minute-long video telling people to go home, but also calling the election fraudulent. We know at least one person was shot inside the Capitol, but we don't have many details at this hour about the shooting. We're working to find out who that person is and who shot them. The victim was taken to the hospital.
Capitol Police escorted lawmakers to secure locations where at this hour they're trying to resume what they started today before the mob shut things down.
Vice President Mike Pence had opened the joint session of Congress about an hour prior. This day is normally a formality, but going into it, we knew about a dozen Republican lawmakers backing President Trump were going to object to counting electoral votes in several battleground states that Joe Biden won, starting with Arizona.
I rise up for myself and 60 of my colleagues to object to the counting of the electoral ballots from Arizona.
If this election were overturned by mere allegations from the losing side, our democracy would enter a death spiral.
Tossing out a state's votes would require a majority from the House and Senate, with Democrats controlling the House and a growing number of senators speaking out against the challenges. The congressional fight and the violence that we saw today will not change the outcome of the election.
And both of Wisconsin's U.S. senators are also publicly calling for a stop to the violence.
Our Naomi Coles joins us now with more. Naomi?
Yeah, Republican Senator Ron Johnson was one of those senators that you just mentioned, one of more than a dozen senators who were planning to block President-elect Joe Biden's electoral vote. Now, despite that, he took to Twitter this afternoon as protesters were breaking into the U.S. Capitol, saying, quote, "Please, if you are in or around the Capitol, respect law enforcement and peacefully disperse." Democrat Senator Tammy Baldwin tweeted, quote, "I am safe, but it's disgraceful that our country has to experience this violence because of Trump's lies, conspiracies, and un-American attacks on our democracy." Now, neither senator was available today for interviews this afternoon. Adam Duxter, meanwhile, talked to Wisconsin U.S. representatives, and he's standing by with more. Adam?
Yeah, well, I spoke with both Representative Mark Pocan and Representative Ron Kind, who said, well, they're both incredibly disappointed with what they're currently seeing in Washington, D.C. Tonight, it's not something that's taken them by surprise. Both representatives say they're currently safe, but Representative Pocan did say he has other lawmakers who've had to evacuate their offices currently in his offices. Representative Kind told me this is a result on so many lawmakers and, of course, President Trump continuing to say there was wide-scale voter fraud in this election, when in fact there was not. And here's how Kind, as well as Republican Representative Mike Gallagher, are reacting tonight.
We're going to finish this as soon as we're allowed to get back in. It's started now, and we are going to work until this is done. And at the end of the process, I'm confident that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be declared the incoming president and vice president of the United States. That is a an ordained conclusion here.
This is Banana Republic crap that we're watching happen right now. This is the cost of this effort. This is the cost of countenancing an effort by Congress to overturn the election and telling thousands of people that there is a legitimate shot of overturning the election.
And this statement came in just literally moments ago from Representative Brian Stile, and he says, "I condemn the reprehensible actions of the criminals inside the United States Capitol today, and I want to thank law enforcement for their efforts to maintain public safety." And he said, "As I said about protests throughout the last year, those wishing to express their First Amendment rights need to follow the law. Anyone not authorized to be in the Capitol needs to immediately leave." Now, both Kine and Pocan say they're not sure how the actual process today is going to play itself out. And for more on how local lawmakers are reacting to today's violence in Washington, D.C., you can visit our website, channel3000.com.
Adam, thank you. Governor Tony Evers had protesters outside of his home in Madison today. More on that in just a moment. But tonight, the governor offered this reaction to what happened in D.C. He said, "We must be united in calling on these individuals to leave the U.S. Capitol and grounds immediately and peacefully. I am praying for the safety of the elected officials, staffers, members of the press, and first responders, and for the speedy recovery of those injured."
Well, people are showing up at the Wisconsin state capitol today as well.
Our Gabriela Becerra has been following these protests all day and joins us live downtown. Gabby?
Well, Eric and Susan, it's definitely very quiet here now. The final few protesters and even a couple counter protesters left just about an hour ago. But that's very unlike what I saw here earlier this afternoon. Now, hundreds of protesters gathered on the steps of the state capitol, standing by their message that President Donald Trump is the winner of the election. People marched and drove their cars around the square before moving to the governor's mansion, like you mentioned. Some of these people I spoke to were emotional about the results and just simply can't believe it.
And they think that they can take this from us? There's no way.
Who is they?
They is the Democratic Party. I'm just so pissed.
Most of the group went home after Congress originally decided to delay the final tally of the Electoral College votes. But all of the activity I saw both here at the Capitol and at the governor's mansion stayed peaceful, but we'll continue to monitor the situation here.
All right, Gabriela, thank you. As the situation remains active at the nation's capital, we'll continue to bring you coverage all night long in our later newscasts and, as always, at channel3000.com. And also, still ahead in this half hour, we speak with a political scientist about exactly what this means for our democracy and for the election. And Nora O'Donnell and the team at CBS News will continue to cover this ongoing situation from Washington. You'll find that coverage on our air right now at Channel 3.
Now let's get a check on the weather. Meteorologist Dana Fulton is on the weather patio with your first warn forecast. Dana?
Still very cloudy outside and right now very foggy. We do have another dense fog advisory in effect for tonight and tomorrow morning, covering most of our area. It's kind of the same story we've had for the last several mornings. Dense fog and the possibility for freezing fog. Right now, visibility down to just a few miles for most of southern Wisconsin. As we get closer to tomorrow morning, likely going to see those visibilities decrease down to about a half mile or even a quarter mile for some folks. We're at 28 right now, Madison, 30 in Janesville. These temperatures very close to our dew point, so that's fueling the fog, and of course the snowpack on the ground that has just been slowly melting away, also fueling our fog. Radar is going to be quiet even with this cloud coverage. Temperatures overnight really not expected to move around too much, staying quite steady in the mid to upper 20s, and the pattern likely going to continue on for us into the weekend. We will take a closer look at when our next opportunity to see a little bit of sunshine might creep back in just a few minutes.
All right, Dana, thank you. CBS News projects Democrat Jon Ossoff is the winner of his runoff election with incumbent Senator David Perdue in the state of Georgia. The victory flips control of the U.S. Senate to Democrats, who will also control the House and the White House. Ossoff declared victory earlier this morning. Overnight, CBS News projected Reverend Raphael Warnock defeated Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler, making the Democrat making Warnock Georgia's first black senator.
Still ahead on News 3 Now at 5. It is one of those unforgettable days. Many of us spent it glued to the TV and to our phones. Where does this day fall in the history of the United States? We'll talk about it next. And coming up tonight on News 3 Now at 6, researchers are looking to get more pregnant women and children involved in COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials. We'll hear from local medical experts at 6. And how the markets responded to all this today. Mixed numbers. The Dow jumped 438 points. The NASDAQ dropped 78. S&P 500 added 21. And we'll be right back.
You're watching News 3 Now at 5.
Well, a sad update from Washington, D.C. The woman who was shot inside on the Capitol grounds during violent pro-Trump protests has died. Here is a live look from the nation's capital as pro-Trump protesters are still gathering after a citywide curfew in D.C. was imposed at 5 p.m. Central Time after Trump supporters invaded the Capitol this afternoon. Police are using tear gas and percussion grenades to continue to clear protesters from the Capitol. The Washington, D.C. police chief says at least 5 weapons have been recovered and at least 13 people have been arrested so far in those pro-Trump protests.
Well, this is unprecedented in U.S. history.
Now, one political scientist we spoke with said this is what you see in dictatorships. Amy Reed joins us now with how he thinks we got here. Amy?
Well, Ken Mayer, who's a professor of American politics at UW-Madison, said this is an unsurprising end for what we've heard for months from some politicians. He said this went beyond a protest once people broke into a federal building in order to object to counting of electoral votes. As a professor, he'll be tasked with explaining it to his students, and he said he doesn't know how to convey just how undemocratic this effort is. But he said it's not just on the president, but on the people who supported the baseless conspiracy theories about widespread fraud.
The people who have been intentionally undermining the integrity of this election for their own political purposes have been lying, and it's disgusting. And this is the result where we have violent armed protesters breaking into the Capitol.
There's not really a playbook from U.S. history on where we go now, but Mayer said by the end of the month, Trump will leave office when President-elect Biden is sworn in. There's also talk about removing Trump from office. As for other politicians, Mayer said that anyone who's not condemning this completely has no place in public office.
Amy, thank you. The coronavirus pandemic continues to rage across the U.S. and in Wisconsin. 50 more people have died in our state. That brings the state's total to more than 5,100. And as hospitals fill up across the U.S., the state is also reporting more than 3,300 new COVID cases. Wisconsin is nearing 500,000 cases. While COVID-19 vaccinations have begun, it will be months before they'll be widely available.
Well, that means there's still a critical need for convalescent plasma. Our Mark Kane tells us what that is and why it's so important in treating COVID.
Dr. Jasmine Zapata is donating her plasma. She's a UW Health pediatrician and recently recovered from COVID-19.
I decided to donate my plasma because there are currently, right in Wisconsin, people in ICUs across the state fighting for their lives. And I knew that the plasma inside of my blood had the power to save other lives because I was someone who recovered.
Convalescent plasma has been authorized to treat people who are currently in the hospital fighting the virus. While the supply of the plasma is good in Madison, that's not the case in other parts of the state and country.
There are several communities very, very close to us here who need help in treating patients with COVID-19, and they're deficient in supply of convalescent plasma. And so the need is really to get as many people to be able to donate their plasma if they've recovered from COVID-19 so that we can treat sick people in hospitals all around our state, all around the Midwest, and all around the country.
If you donate in the Madison area, the plasma can be safely shipped anywhere it's needed. Dr. Zapata said the whole donation process takes about 2 hours, but the satisfaction of helping others lasts long after that.
The people that are there in the hospital are the ones that need us the most, especially to get this life-saving convalescent plasma. And so for that reason, it was so important for me to donate.
I'm Mark Kane, News 3 Now.
Now, if you've recovered from COVID-19 and would like to know more about donating, call the number on your screen. It's area code 608-262-8300.
Let's get a check on the forecast now. Meteorologist Dana Fulton joins us. Dana?
Right now it is still quite foggy outside. We do have that dense fog advisory already in effect for almost all of southern Wisconsin. That continues through Thursday morning, as conditions tomorrow morning will be very similar to what we've already seen for the last several mornings, where we have foggy skies, the possibility for some patchy freezing fog as well. We're down to about 2 to 3 miles as far as our visibility for much of Dane County, so we still have a fairly clear picture with our Edgewater sky cam of downtown, but our temperatures are about 28 degrees for Madison. Those dew points at 27 with the snow on the ground. It's just kind of leading to a cycle where we have fog through the morning and for some areas through parts of the afternoon as well. Our breeze is pretty light in the single digits. We don't have to worry about really much of a wind chill for us. That's the good news. Freezing fog possible tonight, as well as that dense fog for early tomorrow morning. Temperature-wise, we're pretty close to normal. It's chilly outside, but it does feel like January. That continues through the weekend and through most of next week. Our next chance for a little bit of snow kind of well off into the distance. It looks likely for next Thursday and next Friday. So we're going to make it through quite some time before we have to worry about getting the snowblower shovel back out again. Right now, radar fairly quiet for us. Even with that cloudy sky overhead, we have had a few spots where it squeezed out a little bit of a flurry or freezing drizzle, but overall pretty dry, and that's going to continue for us overnight. For tomorrow morning, temperatures in a very similar spot to where we're at right now, mid to upper 20s. We'll stay cloudy in the afternoon with temperatures likely in the low 30s for our afternoon highs. So we climb up just a little bit and then drop back down just a little bit. Overnight lows in the 20s for early Friday, and then Friday afternoon with mostly cloudy skies, we'll see those high temperatures in the upper 20s, if not pretty close to 30 degrees to wrap up the work week and head into the weekend. Now our 6 to 10 day outlook, very likely that we will be trending above average, some warmer temperatures building in. Not really seeing one big trend in the other direction for that longer range temperature outlook though. Precipitation, that's lining up with a few opportunities for some light snow to develop looking ahead towards the end of next week. 32 the high for tomorrow, mostly cloudy skies. Again, fog chances in the morning, possibly some freezing fog early in the day. So not only is visibility reduced, but we do have the potential to have some slick spots with that freezing fog. We're in the upper 20s for afternoon highs through the weekend. Might see a little bit of sunshine to start off next week, as we will have variably cloudy skies. Means a little more cloud coverage than sunshine, but still the chance to see a little bit of sun. And then by the end of next week, it does look likely that we'll have the chance for some light snow or flurries to develop, and that will carry us into the following weekend with a little cooler trend expected along with that. As far as traffic concerns right now, thankfully roads look pretty clear. No accidents to report, which is always good news. East and westbound along the Beltline, fairly smooth right now. It does look like eastbound slows down a little bit near 151, but then things pick right back on up. And the interstate right now smooth all the way through Rock County and through downtown Janesville, no delays. From Janesville to the Beltline, about 28 minutes, 17 minutes to get from Sauk City to Middleton. In Sun Prairie to downtown, a quick 9-minute drive this evening. That's a quick look at traffic.
All right, Dana, thank you. And ahead on News 3 now at 5, the Dane County Sheriff reacting after the Trump supporters invade the nation's capital. We'll hear from Sheriff Dave Mahoney ahead at 5.
You're watching News 3 now at 5.
The woman who was shot inside the Capitol during the violent protests today has died. Police have not immediately provided details about the circumstances of her death. This evening, police used tear gas and percussion grenades to continue to clear protesters from the Capitol. Police say at least 5 weapons have been recovered and at least 13 people have been arrested so far in the pro-Trump protests. More than 1,000 National Guard members were mobilized to help at the nation's capital.
Dane County Sheriff Dave Mahoney is also the president of the National Sheriff's Association, an organization representing the nation's more than 1,000 sheriffs. He issued this statement today on their behalf saying, quote, "This dangerous and authorized incursion into the U.S. Capitol has no place in our democracy."
Those that engage in those behaviors must be held accountable. As I've spoken out in past about the behavior that occurred here in our own community, today I spoke out on what occurred and unfolded in our nation's capital.
Well, he expressed surprise that law enforcement at the Capitol were not more ready for those protests today.
President-elect Biden has selected Merrick Garland, a federal appeals court judge, as his attorney general. In 2016, Garland was snubbed by Republicans for a seat on the Supreme Court. Biden is expected to announce Garland's appointment tomorrow, along with other senior leaders of the department.
And stay with us for a final check of your first warn forecast.
Let's get a final check on the weather with Dana.
We have a dense fog advisory in effect for tonight into tomorrow morning. Cloudy skies expected for the next several days, with temperatures staying pretty close to average for afternoon highs and overnight lows. Might see a little bit of sunshine to start off next week, and then our next opportunity for a little light snow, maybe some flurries, starts to develop and build in for the end of next week and the following weekend.
All right, Dana, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. We're back in 30 minutes for News 3 Now at 6.